Hi everyone, and welcome to our Unit 3, Part 2, Part C presentation. Taking a look here at an assignment for meta-analysis based on the ideas that we just discussed in the previous presentation about meta-analysis. So you'll be going to the Unit 3 readings and bibliographies for this assignment. In Unit 3, you will select the meta-analysis bibliography. That'll provide you with a list of references. You can choose one of the articles in the list that appeals to you or is related to your field, your area of work, your action plan, your logic model, and really connecting those things and applying those topics. You want to share that in a one-paragraph critique after you review the meta-analysis. What was researched? What were the conclusions of the article? And what is the meaning or the value of the article to you? You'll be turning in that one paragraph assignment here on Canvas. We also want to look over a couple other types of research designs. And this is all in preparation for our action plan assignment and understanding where we're coming from and what we're doing for that. You're all probably familiar from other statistics courses or different courses in your program with the quasi-experimental design. Some examples of a quasi-experimental design could include a time series of non-equivalent control. For instance, we're doing the intervention with one student but not with another. We're observing and we're identifying whether the intervention makes a difference. So quasi-experimental design might be used if we're concerned with the cost and the difficulty of achieving a rigorous research setup in a real-life situation all the time. The gold standard studies that we discussed before are very expensive, so quasi-experimental design still gives us some information. It may compromise the rigor, so to speak, but it still provides us with answers. We do have to consider ethical issues that might come into consideration. So if we did a quasi-experimental design where the intervention was done with one student but not with the other, is it ethical to not give the intervention to the quote-unquote control student just to see if the intervention has a result for the other student when we really think it might help both of them? So keep in mind, when we're working with students as subjects or with clients as subjects, that we really want to be careful in this kind of research. So we would want to make it a more short-term process to avoid compromising in those ethical arenas. You're also familiar with single subject design research, which is popular particularly in applied behavior analysis, solving the real problems of real people. So our subject, whether that be a student, a client, whoever that may be, is serving as their own control or baseline and their own treatment. So we're really seeing how is this person doing before intervention and after intervention, and taking data on behavior, measuring frequency, behavioral occurrences, whatever factors we're looking for. We might change a condition or reinforce a replacement behavior. Those are all components that might occur in the intervention. And then we're collecting that data in baseline during the intervention as a follow-up. And there are many different ways that we can do this single subject design. It could be reversal, multiple baseline, and all of those can fall into this category. Then finally, we're looking at the bigger picture, and this is really related to your logic model. So keeping these different kinds of research and these different designs in the back of your mind as we review this. This is pulling together all of these different ideas of inquiry, and we just want to make sure that we're connecting these topics to the logic model mindset, thinking about those short-term, intermediate, and long-term outcomes. So we'll talk through educational evaluation and keep your logic model in mind. In educational evaluation, we're always trying to establish causation. What are we doing? What are we getting? And are these things connected? So educational evaluation could be reviewing or assessing a program or intervention in a therapeutic setting, in a classroom, in a school, in a program. We're always trying to collect comprehensive data, lots of different types of monitoring and assessment and triangulation, looking for observations, interviews, scores, and trying to make sure that all of that information aligns to create a really valid set of results. Educational evaluation could be used for formative purposes. What can we change in our program? How can we improve it? Summative purposes. So to say that the program is successful, it's working, or perhaps that it's not working. And then for purposes of public relations, so we may use educational evaluation results to present to the public, other programs, the district, the community, families, whatever stakeholders we might be talking with, to share the results of our evaluation based on these multiple sources of data. So there are several different parts of an educational evaluation. All of these will connect to your logic model. Maybe thinking about short-term outcomes analysis. So we're looking at those short-term goals. Where are we trying to get in the short term? Some examples you can see are the peer supports being successfully used. Are we seeing less reluctance for clients or for students to attend or participate? Are we seeing staff becoming more welcoming? Are we seeing our stakeholders asking for help? All of these might be examples of short-term outcomes when we're doing an educational evaluation. We want to see that things are starting to work, even if we need more time to evaluate the overall success. We can keep track of this using logs, observations, interviews, and just monitoring that data for each of the outcomes that we're examining. And as we're considering the logic model process for educational evaluation, we want to keep in mind intermediate outcomes as well. So keep in mind what these may look like for your logic model based on your goals. But we might be looking for a student or a client as an intermediate outcome to be taking more initiative or showing more independence. We are looking for replacement behaviors being used. We might be looking for staff collaborating more actively, and that could be in the form of particular meetings that are taking place or formal communications. Are the resources in place? Are they being accessed or utilized? And are we communicating effectively and over a period of time with the community or with families? So once again, we're looking for observations, interviews, artifacts, surveys, focus groups, and we're trying to see these things demonstrated across more time than we would be with the short term. Finally, long-term outcomes are very important in the logic model process. So again, please keep your logic model in mind. We're reviewing our student or client outcomes. What kinds of proficiency are we seeing? Data over the long term, maybe months, maybe years, continuing to do interviews to find out if we're reaching those goals and exceeding them. Also looking for acceptance within the community, for clients to really be integrated or for students to be meeting those long-term outcomes such as employment, graduation, independent living, all of these things that we are targeting. That's really what we're looking for in the long term in many of our programs or our schools or our settings. So short-term, intermediate, and long-term outcomes, all a part of educational evaluation and all a part of the logic model. You also want to make sure that we're consistently doing consumer analysis, looking at the scope and the satisfaction of our performance and the scope and the satisfaction for our interventions in educational evaluation process. We want to make sure that we're covering what we need to cover, that your role is clear to yourself, which sounds funny, but it's actually a big issue if we're not sure what we're supposed to be doing. And then finding out if our role is clear to other people. Our parents or families, guardians satisfied with our services? Are the clients or the students satisfied? And are the teachers or other providers, stakeholders in our settings satisfied with the interventions that we have in place and the services that we are delivering? So once again, in relation to the idea of self-reflection and self-assessment, never be afraid to evaluate yourself and your own work. This is very important. Definitely important to continue to analyze the process as we're developing our logic model. So keep this in mind for our logic model assignment. We're looking for discrepancies between our services that we expect to deliver and the actual services that are in place and the results thereof. We're looking for a direct relationship between the services and the results, and if we're not seeing that, we want to identify why and what we could do differently. Finding out how clients are progressing or students are progressing through the system, what's keeping them on track or not, whether the stakeholders are satisfied, and whether the goals are connected to our outcomes. That could be IEP goals, different behavior goals, depending on the setting. And then we're looking for team processes, meetings, communication, conflict resolution. Do we have things in place and are they occurring effectively and efficiently? So process analysis and these particular points are particularly important as well when we're working on a logic model. Now we're going to take a look at the idea of action research. We've talked through the bigger picture of educational evaluation and a couple other types of research and how these all connect to the concept of the logic model and evidence-based practice. Now it's important to take a look at action research. This will be related to one of our major course assignments. So the difference between everything we've discussed so far in action research is that action research studies a real learning setting, whatever that setting may be, a classroom or a program, to understand and improve our practice, our instruction, and our actions within that setting itself. Action research can branch and change, so it's very flexible. And in action research, the practitioner is the researcher. So that would be a teacher, a therapist, a coordinator, any individual who wants to learn more about his or her work within a setting is going to be the researcher in action research, researching yourself and what you're doing and your program and whether or not it's working. There can be blurred boundaries between the inquiry or the research and the practice in action research. And the reason for this is because the research exists within the practice. So this sets action research apart from other styles and types of research, different designs. You definitely want to choose your focus carefully based on the needs that you observe, and that's why the researcher is the best person to be the researcher in action research is the practitioner, because we're the ones within the settings who can identify the needs and the issues and the areas for focus. And then finally, it's very important to take the results of action research and share them. You want to keep that information to yourself. So you want to give them to colleagues, give them to other people around you, and ask for feedback and make an investment, in performance, not just for yourself, but for others, to identify issues and interventions and areas for growth. So there are 5 essential steps in action research, and they're listed here. Number 1, when conducting action research, you'll want to ask a question or identify a problem or define an area to explore. So that's really your research question. What am I looking into? You'll decide what your data will be and how and when you will collect it. You then will collect and analyze that data. You will describe how the findings can be used or applied, and you will report and share your findings with other people. That may be your colleagues, your leadership, funding sources, whoever you might be sharing this information with, to improve not only your process, but the processes of others in your setting or in settings like yours. Okay, so one of our major course assignments is called the action plan. You can review the description of that major assignment under major assignments in the Canvas shell. However, for this unit, we will have a draft submission. So you want to consider concerns as you're working on your logic model that arise regarding your settings. So as you do this logic model, what issues are you seeing? And for this draft submission in Unit 3, you'll use the 5 steps, these 5 essential steps here that we just discussed. And you'll write a 1-page submission in APA format to brainstorm on all 5 of these steps. So considering your setting, the problems that you've seen or the issues that you've seen, how could you implement action research in your setting? What would you research? How and why? And then you want to reference at least one assigned reading from our session in APA format to support your statements. And that's really about connecting those readings, whether that be articles assigned or from the bibliography, or whether that might be the text. You want to make sure that you're pulling all 5 of these steps in, and this will help you to prepare not only for your logic model, but also for your action plan submission at the end of the course. And as a small note here, we've got a quiz for Unit 3. It's based on your assigned readings and also information from these video presentations. Thank you very much.